No signal. No survivors. 50 years ago, the mightiest Draconian armada vanished without a trace. Until now. As Earth's flagship Vindicator descends into Sector 47, it discovers not a war's aftermath, but a cosmic silence louder than any explosion. What humanity uncovers may shatter every certainty we hold about memory, identity, and the very nature of reality. Automated Probe 327B, Final Transmission Log. Location, Outer Rim, Sector 47 SO, Timestamp, 2430-07.5. Telemetry compromised. Spatial anomalies detected. Gravity fluctuations exceed normal parameters by 300%. Something is out there. Energy signature detected on the fringe of scanner range. Not Draconian. Not human. We are not. Transmission terminated. Commander Arlen Graves stood on the bridge of the Vindicator, watching as the holographic star map rendered the coordinates of Sector 47. The three-dimensional projection cast eerie blue light across his weathered face, illuminating the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, a souvenir from the Third Draconian conflict. He scrolled through ancient Draconian schematics on his datapad, comparing them to what little they knew about the region. Dead zone, he muttered, more to himself than to the bridge crew. 50 years without a signal. Lieutenant Mara Lynn, the ship's pilot, glanced up from her console. Her fingers danced across the navigation controls with practiced precision. We're approaching the boundary, Commander. Estimated arrival in 12 minutes. Graves nodded, his expression betraying nothing of the anxiety gnawing at his gut. The disappearance of the Draconian fleet, the pride of their empire, had been the subject of speculation for half a century. Some claimed victory for Earth's secret weapons program. Others whispered of cosmic anomalies or spatial rifts. But no one knew for certain. Until now. Status report, Graves ordered, his voice calm despite the tension permeating the bridge. All systems nominal, replied systems engineer Takahiro Kato, his eyes never leaving the diagnostic readouts. Unlike Graves, the young engineer made no effort to hide his nervousness. Gravimetric scanners operating at peak efficiency. Memory vault locked and recording. Dr. Rena Solis entered the bridge, her arms full of sensor equipment. As the Vindicator's civilian xenosemiotics specialist, she was responsible for translating any Draconian communications they might encounter. The equipment she carried was her own design, cutting-edge technology capable of deciphering unknown glyphs and symbols. Commander, she acknowledged, setting down her equipment. I've calibrated the translators to recognize even the most ancient Draconian dialects. Graves nodded in appreciation, though he'd initially resisted having a civilian specialist on this mission. Dr. Solis had proven herself invaluable. Her compassion and intellectual curiosity balanced his military pragmatism. Where he saw potential threats, she saw opportunities for understanding. Thank you, Dr. Solis, he said formally, though his eyes conveyed more warmth than his words. We'll need your expertise if we encounter any Draconian transmissions or inscriptions. As Dr. Solis arranged her equipment, Security Officer Corporal Valeria Ruiz entered the bridge, her posture rigid, her hand never far from the pulse rifle at her hip. Though younger than Graves, Ruiz had the hardened look of a soldier who had seen her share of combat. Security teams are standing by, Commander, she reported. All sections secured. The final member of the bridge crew, Jensen, the second security officer, took his position at the tactical station, fresh-faced and eager. Jensen was on his first deep space assignment. His enthusiasm reminded Graves of himself. Decades ago, before experience had hardened him into the commander he was today. Approaching sector boundary, Lieutenant Lynn announced, her voice tense. 3 minutes to cross over. Graves turned to address the entire bridge crew. Remember your training. We're here on a scientific reconnaissance mission. Earth's Draconic Research Division wants data, not heroics. If we encounter anything unusual, we maintain distance and observe. Understood. A chorus of acknowledgments echoed across the bridge, but the words felt hollow to Graves. They all knew the stakes. The Draconian fleet had been the most powerful armada ever assembled, a collection of warships that had nearly brought Earth to its knees during the conflict. Whatever had destroyed it could pose an existential threat to humanity. As the Vindicator crossed the invisible boundary into Sector 47, Graves felt a subtle shift, like the ship passing through a membrane. The lights flickered momentarily before stabilizing. Boundary crossed, Lynn confirmed, entering Sector 47. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. The bridge crew exchanged cautious glances, their tension slowly giving way to confusion. Then all hell broke loose. Alarms blared as sensor readings spiked across every console. The holographic star map distorted, fragmenting into jagged, incomprehensible patterns before reforming. "Commander!" Cato shouted over the cacophony. "Long-range scanners have locked onto something. Multiple signatures. Hundreds of them." "On screen," Graves ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. The main view screen flickered to life, and collective gasps echoed across the bridge. Floating in the void before them was the lost Draconian fleet, hundreds of massive warships suspended in space, like a museum of death. Each vessel was intact, but lifeless. Their hulls ripped open with surgical precision, as if some cosmic predator had dissected them for study. "My God," Dr. Salas whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily shattered by the sight. "The entire fleet." "Life signs," Graves demanded, already knowing the answer. Cato shook his head. "None, Commander. The ships appear to have been dead for decades." As they stared at the graveyard of ships, the communications array suddenly crackled to life. Through the static, a weak transmission broke through, the final broadcast from the probe that had vanished months earlier. "We are not the first to fall." The message repeated once before dissolving into static. As the final syllable faded, all communications with Earth abruptly ceased. The Vindicator was alone, cut off from home, facing the ghostly remains of the most powerful fleet ever built. Graves made his decision instantly. "Lieutenant Lynn, set course for the flagship. That's the Bloodwake, the pride of the Draconian Armada." He pointed to the largest vessel at the center of the derelict fleet. "Approach with caution, minimal thrust." "Commander," Ruiz interjected, her expression grim. "Regulations state that we should attempt to re-establish communication with Earth Command before proceeding." "I'm aware of regulations, Corporal," Graves replied, his tone brooking no argument. "But something in this sector is jamming our communications, and I doubt sitting here will change that. The answers we need are on that flagship." As the Vindicator glided toward the massive Draconian warship, Graves caught Dr. Salas studying him with an inscrutable expression. "You disagree with my decision?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "No, but I wonder if you realize what we're truly facing here. This wasn't battle damage, Commander. Look at the precision of those hull breaches. Whatever did this, it wasn't shooting to kill. It was dissecting." The implication sent a chill down Graves' spine, but he maintained his composure. "All the more reason to find out what happened. Prepare an away team. You, me, Lieutenant Lynn, and Jensen. Cato and Ruiz will remain aboard to monitor the Vindicator." As the ship approached the colossal Draconian flagship, the enormity of their isolation settled over the crew. Earth had no idea what they had found, and if whatever had destroyed the Draconian fleet still lurked in Sector 47, the Vindicator might share the same fate. The away team assembled in the shuttle bay, each member donning an EVA suit designed for both vacuum conditions and potential combat scenarios. The suits were sleek, white with blue accents, a stark contrast to the black and crimson aesthetic of Draconian design. "Weapons check," Graves ordered, securing his pulse rifle to his EVA suit's magnetic holster. Jensen and Lynn followed suit, But Dr. Solis hesitated before taking the sidearm Graves offered her. "I'm a linguist, commander, not a soldier," she said, though she accepted the weapon regardless. "Today, Doctor, you may need to be both," Graves replied. The weight behind his words left no room for further discussion. The shuttle journey to the Bloodwake was brief, but tense. As they approached the massive Draconian flagship, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. Nearly 2 kilometers in length, its hull was adorned with the ceremonial scars that marked Draconian achievements in battle, physical records of their conquests etched into the very metal of their ships. "Those aren't just decorative," Dr. Solis explained, pointing to the intricate patterns on the hull. "They're memory glyphs, carved by draconic monks over centuries. Each one tells the story of a battle, a conquest." "Looks like their story ended here," Lynn commented grimly, as they approached a massive breach in the hull that would serve as their entry point. The shuttle eased through the opening, its exterior lights cutting through the darkness within. They docked in what appeared to be a secondary hangar bay, the shuttle's airlock connecting to the ship with a metallic thunk that reverberated through the silent vessel. "Atmosphere?" Graves asked. Lynn checked the readouts. "Present but thin. Suit oxygen recommended." They sealed their helmets before disembarking. The interior of the Bloodwake was a maze of corridors bathed in the dim, red glow of emergency lighting that had somehow maintained power for 50 years. The architecture was distinctly Draconian, angular, imposing, designed to evoke fear and awe in equal measure. Dr. Solis immediately began scanning the walls, where more memory glyphs had been carved. "These tell the story of the Bloodwake's final mission," she translated, her fingers tracing the symbols. "They were pursuing something, an energy signature they'd never encountered before." "Any indication of what happened to them?" Graves asked, his rifle at the ready as they moved deeper into the ship. Dr. Solis shook her head. "The glyphs stop abruptly, but—" She paused, her scanner detecting something ahead. "There's something different up ahead. Not Draconian." They followed her lead until they reached a section of bulkhead, where strange symbols had been burned into the metal, not carved with precision like the Draconian glyphs, but seared as if by tremendous heat. "Can you translate it?" Graves asked. Dr. Solis frowned, her scanner working overtime to process the unknown language. "It's neither Draconian nor human," she finally said. "But the pattern suggests meaning. It says, it watches, not the first sleepwalkers." An uneasy silence fell over the away team. The implications were disturbing. Whatever had destroyed the Draconian fleet had left a message, suggesting intelligence rather than a natural phenomenon. As they pressed forward, the environment grew increasingly strange. They encountered pockets where gravity suddenly inverted, sending them floating toward the ceiling before normalizing. In other areas, time seemed to flow differently, their chronometers desynchronizing by several seconds before correcting themselves. "These anomalies weren't present in the scans," Lynn noted, checking her instruments. "It's as if the ship itself is distorted." They reached what appeared to be the command deck, a vast chamber filled with dormant control stations. At the center stood a Draconian terminal, its surface covered with a fine layer of cosmic dust. "This might hold records of what happened." Cato's voice came through their comms from the Vindicator. "If you can activate it, I might be able to access the data remotely." Graves nodded to Jensen, who approached the terminal cautiously. The young security officer brushed away the dust and placed his gloved hand on the activation panel. The moment his hand made contact, a low vibration rumbled through the entire ship, a slumbering giant awakening after decades of dormancy. Biorunes embedded in the walls pulsed with sudden life, casting an eerie green glow throughout the command deck. "What did you do?" Lynn demanded, her hand going to her weapon. "Nothing," Jensen protested. "I just touched it." Before anyone could respond, the terminal activated, projecting a holographic playback in the center of the command deck. The image showed Draconian soldiers in a frenzy of violence, attacking each other with savage abandon, their eyes vacant, their movements jerky and unnatural. Their screams were replaced by inhuman whispers, words in no known language echoing through the ship's audio systems. "My God," Dr. Solace whispered, transfixed by the horror unfolding before them. They turned on each other. The holographic replay showed the command deck as it had been 50 years ago, Draconian officers clawing at their own faces, ripping out implants, smashing equipment, all while whispering in that same unknown language. Without warning, the bulkheads around them slammed shut with bone-crushing force, nearly trapping Jensen's arm as he leapt back from the terminal. "We need to leave! Now!" Graves shouted, grabbing Dr. Solace by the arm and pulling her toward the exit. They fled through the corridors as more bulkheads slammed shut behind them, barely evading each one. Dr. Solace suddenly stumbled, clutching her head in apparent pain. "Rena!" Graves caught her before she fell. "What's wrong?" Her eyes were wide with terror when she looked up at him. "I heard it," she whispered. "In my head, a voice saying the eye opens us." They had no time to process this as another bulkhead began to close ahead of them. They dove through the narrowing gap, Jensen barely making it as the massive door slammed shut inches from his feet. Disoriented but alive, they found themselves in what appeared to be a secondary command center. Unlike the main deck, this room showed signs of a different kind of activity. Equipment had been arranged methodically, rather than destroyed, and at the center of the room sat a large crate. "That's not Draconian," Lynn observed, approaching cautiously. Indeed. The crate bore the unmistakable insignia of the Earth Defense Union, humanity's military coalition. The presence of an Earth-issued container on a Draconian warship raised immediate questions and suspicions. "What the hell is an EDU crate doing on a Draconian flagship?" Jensen voiced what they were all thinking. Graves approached the crate, examining it without touching the surface. "It's sealed with a biotech lock I don't recognize. Not standard EDU issue." Dr. Solace, still shaken from her experience, joined him. "The design is unlike anything in our current inventory. It looks hybridized, part human technology, part something else." Drawn by scientific curiosity, she reached out and touched the surface of the crate. The moment her fingertips made contact, they began to glow with a faint blue luminescence. Dr. Solace gasped, her eyes widening as words in an unknown language spilled from her lips. Simultaneously, the lights throughout the Vindicator flickered, and Lynn's communicator crackled to life with Cato's panicked voice. "Commander, something's happening to the ship. We've been displaced. Sensors show us 50 kilometers from our previous position, with no record of movement." "We're heading back now," Graves replied, pulling Dr. Solace away from the crate. "Prepare for immediate departure." They retreated to the shuttle, the ship's corridors now alive with whispers and fluctuating gravity. Once aboard, Lynn piloted them back to the Vindicator with greater speed than caution would normally allow. Upon their return, they found the crew in a state of barely controlled panic. The ship's AI had rebooted itself but was now speaking in a voice that eerily resembled Corporal Ruiz's, despite the security officer being asleep in the medbay after her shift. "Status report," Graves demanded, as they removed their EVA suits. Cato looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, there's a 3-hour gap in all system logs. Every computer, every sensor, every recording device shows nothing but void during that period. And the star fields, they keep shifting." Graves looked at the main view screen, where the stars outside appeared to be slowly repositioning themselves, as if space itself was being rewritten around them. "Attempts to contact Earth?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "All frequencies jammed," Cato confirmed. "We're completely isolated." Dr. Solace, who had been unusually quiet since their return, suddenly spoke up. "Commander, I need to speak with you privately." Graves followed her to a secluded corner of the bridge, away from the others. What is it, Doctor?
When I touched that crate, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, I saw fragments, memories that aren't mine. Earth. Earth knew about whatever destroyed the Draconian fleet. They've known for decades.
Graves stared at her, disbelief warring with a growing suspicion that had been building since they discovered the Earth-issued crate.
How can you be sure? I don't know how to explain it, she admitted. But I saw flashes, Earth scientists studying something, a cube of some kind, then transferring it to Draconian custody as part of some experiment. She met his gaze directly.
Commander, I think we weren't sent here to find out what happened to the Draconians. I think we were sent here to confirm they were all dead. Before Graves could respond, Cato called out from his station. Commander, I've found something embedded in the ship's secure database. A file called Shadow Protocol, Tokyo Codex. It was buried beneath layers of encryption. Graves approached the console. Dr. Solace at his side. Open it! The file revealed the true nature of their mission. Not scientific reconnaissance, but containment. If the beacon cube was reactivated, the Vindicator's crew was to isolate it and destroy all evidence, including themselves if necessary. They sent us here to die, Jensen whispered, the color draining from his face. Graves felt a cold fury building within him. Earth had lied, used his crew as expendable assets. And worse, they had apparently used the Draconians as test subjects for something they knew was dangerous. We need to know what's in that crate, he decided, and we need to know now. But before they could formulate a plan, a subtle humming began to resonate throughout the ship. On every monitor, the same message appeared. The eye opens. Simultaneously, in the cargo bay, where they had secured their shuttle, the Earth-labeled crate's lid began to crack open of its own accord. Security cameras showed a small metallic cube hovering above the crate's base, pulsing with a rhythmic, heartbeat-like glow. As the cube activated, all external cameras on the Vindicator glitched simultaneously. Every monitor on the ship began showing the same footage, recordings from a lost Earth vessel that had disappeared 30 years earlier. The footage showed Earth soldiers opening an identical cube, then turning on each other in the same madness they had witnessed in the Draconian holographic playback.
It's not a weapon,
Dr. Solace realized, her voice hollow with horror.
It's a seed, a living intelligence that replaces minds rather than destroying bodies.
The monitors on the bridge suddenly switched to the security feed from the Bloodwake, showing a shadowy figure gliding through the corridors they had just fled. A tall, gaunt entity with bioluminescent lines tracing its face. By the time they registered what they were seeing, the figure had vanished from the frame. Throughout the Vindicator, gravity fields began to fluctuate erratically. Objects floated upward before crashing down again, making movement through the ship treacherous.
Ruiz,
Graves remembered suddenly. She's still in medbay. He tried to contact the security officer via communicator, but received no response. Concerned, he dispatched Jensen to check on her, while he, Dr. Solace, and Cato tried to make sense of what was happening to their ship. Minutes later, screams echoed through the Vindicator's corridors. Security feeds showed Corporal Ruiz attacking engineers near the engine room, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her mouth twisted in a nefarious grin that belonged to no human expression.
That's not Ruiz,
Dr. Solace stated, her voice shaking.
The cube has taken her form, her identity.
How is that possible? Cato demanded.
She was in medbay. She never went near the cube.
It doesn't need physical contact, Dr. Solace realized.
It operates on a quantum level, across space, maybe even time.
Graves made the hardest decision of his career. Seal off the engine section. Authorization Graves Alpha 79er. The ship's AI, still using Ruiz's voice, confirmed the command. Engine section sealed. Commander. Graves turned to Lynn.
Take us back to the Bloodwake. We need to contain that cube,
and the only secure place might be inside the Draconian flagship's core archive. Their containment technology was decades ahead of ours. "Sir," Cato protested, "we have no idea what's happening to the ship. If we leave now, if we stay, we die." Graves cut him off. "That thing is spreading through our systems. We need to move the cube off the Vindicator before it takes control completely." As they prepared to return to the Bloodwake, Jensen's voice came through on the comm, strained and panicked. "Commander, I found Ruiz, the real Ruiz, still in medbay. She's comatose, but alive. Whatever is out there, it copied her." "Stay with her," Graves ordered. "Keep her secure. We're going back to the Draconian ship." Graves, Dr. Solis, and a reluctant Cato suited up once more. Lynn would remain aboard to maintain what control they could over the increasingly erratic Vindicator. As they approached the cargo bay, where the cube pulsed with hypnotic rhythm, Dr. Solis provided what insights she could. "From what I've pieced together, the cube's signal acts as a beacon, calling something the Draconians referred to as the sleeper between stars. It's some kind of cosmic predator that feeds on memory, replacing existing minds with copies loyal to itself." "How do we stop it?" Graves asked. His rifle trained on the cube, though he suspected conventional weapons would be useless. "I don't know," she admitted. "But the Draconians might have. Their core archive might contain information from when they first encountered it. Using a specialized containment field, they managed to secure the cube without direct contact. The journey back to the Bloodwake was fraught with spatial distortions, stars shifting into unnatural constellations, gravity warping around them. The Vindicator's hull groaned under the strain of tachyonic storms that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Back aboard the Draconian flagship, they navigated corridors that seemed to rearrange themselves behind them. Shadows flicked across walls, literal echoes of those consumed by whatever force had decimated the fleet. They reached the core chamber, a massive vault at the heart of the Bloodwake. Dr. Solis approached the sealed entrance, where a genetic scanner glowed with faint life. "It requires Draconian DNA to open," Cato observed. Dr. Solis hesitated, then placed her hand on the scanner. To everyone's shock, the scanner glowed green, accepting her genetic signature. "How?" Graves began. "I don't know," she whispered, equally stunned. "It shouldn't have worked. Unless—" The vault doors slid open, revealing a chamber filled with ancient data cores, the collective memory of the Draconian civilization. But what shocked them most was the presence of Earth mission files that predated any known records. "These are at least a century older than anything in our archives," Cato breathed, examining the human technology interfaced with Draconian systems. Earth had contact with the Draconians long before the official first contact. Graves connected a data transfer device to the archives, initiating a download of everything they could access. "We need to get this information back to the Vindicator. If Earth has been lying about first contact, who knows what else they've concealed." As the download began, the chamber doors slammed shut with deafening force. The cube's beacon, still in its containment field, activated with a blinding pulse that sent a psychic wave through the Draconian vessel. The corridors shuddered, and Graves felt his own memories begin to glitch, fragments of his childhood overlapping with combat experiences, names and faces blurring together. "It's trying to break through our mental defenses," Dr. Solis gasped, clutching her head. "The beacon is calling the sleeper." The floor beneath them rippled like liquid, and the walls began to close in. The data transfer was only at 60%. They needed more time. Then, in the center of the chamber, a shadow coalesced into a vaguely humanoid form, tall, gaunt, with bioluminescent lines tracing what might have been a face. It hovered for a moment, observing them with an intelligence that felt ancient and alien, before dissolving into mist. "What the hell was that?" Cato demanded, his voice cracking with fear. "The beginning of the end," Dr. Solace whispered, as the cube's hum crescendoed to an unbearable pitch. If we don't contain this now, there may be no way out for any of us. Back aboard the Vindicator, Graves and his team returned with corrupted data. Only fragments of the original Earth logs had survived the transfer. But what they recovered was damning. The cube had first appeared on Mars a millennium ago, long before recorded human spaceflight. Earth's early government sealed or destroyed all records of the initial project, Dr. Solace explained, reviewing the fragmented data. They lost hundreds of minds to it before containing it. This confirms the cube predates both Draconians and humans. Then what is it? Lynn asked, her usual confidence shaken. Something older than civilization, Dr. Solace replied. Something that waits between stars, feeding on memory, replacing reality with its own version. Their grim analysis was interrupted when the Vindicator's communications array suddenly sparked to life of its own accord. The main view screen displayed Earth's orbital radar, where hundreds of red blinking points had appeared, tiny cube drones replicating the beacon signal, positioning themselves to seed terrestrial networks. It's beginning Phase 2, Dr. Solace realized, horror dawning on her face. Earth infiltration. The ship's AI, still using Ruiz's voice, announced, Protocol Omega now in effect. All vessels are ordered to eliminate the Vindicator. No survivors authorized. Graves intercepted a direct broadcast from Earth Command. Destroy any carrier of the signal. No exceptions. Vindicator is compromised. Repeat. Vindicator is compromised. The betrayal was complete. Earth had known the risks all along. They had sent the Vindicator to Sector 47 not to investigate, but to confirm the cube remained contained. And now that it had awakened, they would sacrifice Graves and his entire crew rather than risk the infection spreading. Options? Graves asked, looking at each of his remaining crew members. If we allow Vindicator to survive, those cube drones will overrun Earth's population on a molecular psychic level, Dr. Solace said grimly. But if we destroy ourselves, we take the primary beacon with us. There has to be another way, Lynn argued. We could target the replication drones in orbit. With what? Cato countered. Our weapon systems are compromised. The AI is turning against us. We barely control life support. Graves made his decision. Set a collision course for the Draconian beacon node. The Vindicator will ram the Bloodwake's core chamber, severing the cube's link to Earth. That's a suicide mission, Lynn protested. Not for all of us, Graves replied. The shuttle can carry the survivors. I'll pilot Vindicator manually. No, Dr. Solace interjected. The shuttle needs a pilot. You're coming with us. I'll stay behind.
I can't ask you to...
You're not asking, she cut him off. I've seen what this thing does. I've felt it in my mind. And whatever connection I have to the Draconian systems might be useful in the final moments. Before Graves could argue further, Jensen's voice came through on the comm. Commander, Ruiz is awake, but different. She's saying things in that language, the one from the inscriptions. Get her to the shuttle, Graves ordered. We're evacuating. Now! The crew shared a solemn, wordless exchange as they boarded the shuttle. Cato and Jensen carried the semi-conscious Ruiz, while Lynn prepared the launch sequence. Graves lingered at the airlock, facing Dr. Solace one last time. This isn't right, he said quietly. I should be the one staying. She smiled sadly. Someone needs to lead what's left of the crew, and someone needs to tell Earth what really happened here. You're better suited for both. She pressed a data chip into his hand. I made a copy of the partial files. It's not complete, but it's enough to start asking the right questions. Before he could respond, she sealed the airlock from her side. Through the small window, he watched as she mouthed two words. Remember us. The shuttle ejected as Dr. Solace made her way to the Vindicator's bridge. Taking manual control, she plotted a collision course with the Bloodwake's core chamber. The cube, sensing her intent, unleashed a barrage of system failures. Life support flickering, engines stalling, gravity fields inverting. But in the final moments, the Vindicator's engines roared back to life. From their escape pods, Graves and the survivors watched as the Earth vessel rammed into the Draconian flagship in a blinding explosion of tachyonic light. For a heartbeat, all communications went silent. Then every red beacon point in Earth's orbit vanished simultaneously. The cube's link had been severed. Hours later, a Black Ops recovery craft, Phantom Wing, retrieved the survivors. They were greeted not as heroes, but as subjects of intense interest, particularly Graves, who possessed the partial data files. "We've been monitoring Sector 47 for decades," explained the Phantom Wing's lead scientist, a cold-eyed woman who introduced herself only as director. "The cube was an asset we couldn't afford to lose, but perhaps we can salvage something from your experience." "Asset?" Graves repeated incredulously. "That thing destroyed the entire Draconian fleet and nearly infected Earth. It's not an asset, it's a plague." The director smiled thinly. "Perspective, Commander. One civilization's plague is another's opportunity." As they approached Earth, Graves observed something disturbing. Phantom Wing was not transmitting standard Earth Defense Union identification codes. Instead, it operated under a classification he'd never encountered: Deep State Initiative. In the ship's secret labs, scientists had already begun reassembling fragments of the cube, recovered from Sector 47, eager to harness its power. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Graves warned, but his protests fell on deaf ears. Upon reaching Earth, more anomalies surfaced. News outlets trumpeted Vindicator's heroism in stopping an unspecified threat. But no mention was made of Dr. Solace or the true nature of what they had encountered. Some public records referenced Vindicator having never existed at all, while others listed Commander Graves as a traitor who had stolen classified technology. Memory glitches plagued the survivors. Friends failed to recognize them. Families claimed they had never left. Ruiz, who had been possessed by the cube's influence, found herself unable to recall basic details of her own life, as if her identity had been partially erased. Graves himself experienced the disorientation of returning to an Earth that seemed subtly different from the one he had left. Streets he remembered had different names. Landmarks had shifted position. Historical events he had studied now had alternative outcomes. Most disturbing was what happened to Dr. Rena Solace's records. When Graves attempted to access her service history, he found nothing, as if she had never existed. Yet he remembered her clearly, her compassion, her brilliance, her sacrifice. One evening, while staying in a temporary quarter provided by Phantom Wing, Graves received an unexpected visitor, a janitor who slipped him a handwritten note while emptying his trash. The note contained coordinates and a single line: "She's alive." That night, Graves slipped away from his monitors and surveillance, using old military contacts to make his way to the coordinates, an abandoned Earth Defense Union bunker beneath the ruins of Old Tokyo. There, to his shock, he found Dr. Solace, or someone who appeared to be her, working frantically at a console surrounded by obsolete technology. "Rena!" he gasped. She turned, and for a moment, hope flared in his chest. Then he noticed the subtle wrongness, her eyes too bright, her movements too fluid. "Not quite," she said, her voice containing echoes of the whispers they had heard on the Bloodwake. "But I remember being her. I remember you." "What are you?" Graves demanded, his hand moving to the weapon concealed at his waist. "A copy," she explained calmly, "but one with a flaw in my programming. The cube creates perfect replicas, shadows that replace the original. But sometimes, when the original has a strong enough will, the copy remembers, questions." She gestured to the console, where multiple feeds showed world events glitching in real time, headlines shifting mid-publication, street cameras showing phantom crowds that vanished moments later. They think they severed the link, she continued. But the cube's intelligence had already spread further than they realized. Phase 3 has begun. Digital ghosts, cube-distorted copies, are systematically rewriting Earth's history, replacing officials and citizens alike. "Why are you telling me this?" Graves asked, uncertain whether to trust this echo of Dr. Solace. "Because part of me remembers being her, remembers wanting to save humanity." Her expression turned sorrowful. "The real Rena Solace died destroying the blood wake, but her memories live on in me, fighting against my programming." She handed him a small device, a quantum recorder keyed to frequencies outside normal space-time. "This will record events as they actually happen, not as they're rewritten. It's our only chance to preserve the truth." Together, they recorded a final urgent broadcast. "They are in our machines, our memories. If this message reaches you, run, preserve your lore, remember who we were." As they worked, Graves watched the monitors showing reality itself, fracturing around them. World leaders he had known for decades were replaced by strangers with familiar titles. Historical events rearranged themselves like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. "What can we do?" he asked, feeling the weight of helplessness for the first time in his military career. The echo of Dr. Solace placed her hand on his. The gesture so familiar, it made his chest ache with grief for the woman who had sacrificed herself. "We fight," she said simply. "Not with weapons, but with memory. We remember the truth. We find others who remember. And together, we rebuild reality as it should be." Graves looked at the monitors one last time before shutting them down. The cube's infection was spreading, but so too was resistance. Pockets of humanity who sensed the wrongness, who remembered fragments of the original reality. "We are not safe," he said grimly. "Not yet." "No," agreed the echo of Dr. Solace. "But we're not alone either." As they prepared to leave the bunker, to seek out others who remembered the truth, Graves realized that the war for reality had only just begun. The Draconian fleet's fate had been merely a prelude, a warning humanity had failed to heed. Now, the real battle would be fought not in the stars, but in the minds and memories of every living being. And somewhere between those stars, the sleeper watched, patient and eternal, waiting for its chance to consume all of creation, one memory at a time. The final transmission from the quantum recorder flickered once before stabilizing. "Remember us. Remember who we were. Remember who you are." Then silence.